He hadn't eaten in 3 days. 3 days of nothing. Not a full meal. Not even the scraps he sometimes found outside the restaurant on Clement Street before the morning staff came and cleared them away. 3 days of his stomach making sounds he had learned to ignore. 3 days of water from public fountains and the specific dull ache behind the eyes that comes from genuine hunger. Not appetite, hunger, the real kind. And then he saw it, a wallet, lying on the pavement, fat with cash, right there in front of him, as if the city had finally decided to give him something. Most people would have taken the money and run. Nobody was watching. Nobody would have known. The money was right there, and he was starving. And the mathematics of that situation felt brutally simple. What he did instead set off a chain of events that ended his life on the streets forever. His name was Marcus Webb. He was 42 years old. He had been sleeping rough for 14 months. And on that cold Tuesday morning in October, standing on the corner of Aldgate Street, with an empty stomach and a full wallet in his hand that did not belong to him, he made a decision that most people in his position would never have made. And that decision was about to change everything. Nobody ends up on the street all at once. That is the thing that most people who have never been there do not understand. It is not one catastrophic fall. It is a series of smaller ones, each one survivable on its own, each one narrowing the options available for the next, until one day you look up and the options have run out entirely. That was Marcus Webb's story. He had grown up in a working-class family in South London. His father had driven buses for 30 years. His mother had cleaned offices. They had not been wealthy, but they had been steady. And steady, Marcus had learned, watching them, was its own kind of wealth. He had done a 2-year plumbing apprenticeship at 18. He had been good at it, practical, methodical, the kind of person who could look at a problem and work backward to its cause. He had built a small but reliable client base, enough to rent a flat, enough to live. For 15 years, that had been enough. Then his mother had become ill, a long illness, the kind that arrives gradually and then accelerates. He had reduced his working hours to help care for her. He had spent his savings on her medication. He had not complained. She was his mother. She had worked double shifts her whole life for him. This was the repayment, and he made it without bitterness. She died after 3 years, and Marcus, who had spent 3 years watching his financial position narrow while telling himself it was temporary, found himself on the other side of her funeral with a grief he hadn't fully allowed himself to feel, and a bank account that was essentially empty, and a client list that had shrunk while he was away, and a rent that had gone up twice while he was distracted. He fell behind. 1 month, then 2. His landlord was not unkind, but he was not a charity either. By the 4th month, the eviction notice arrived. He had tried everything a person tries. He had called the council. He had applied for emergency accommodation. He had called every friend he had, most of whom had their own complications, and offered what they could, which was not enough, and for not long enough. He had slept on 3 different sofas over 4 months while he tried to rebuild. He had got a few jobs, but they had not paid enough to get a deposit together. And then one evening, he had no more sofas, and no more options he could immediately see. And that was how Marcus Webb ended up on the street. 14 months. He had survived it the way people survive impossible things, by reducing the problem to the next manageable unit. Not how do I get off the street, just how do I get through today? He had found a shelter that let him in on the coldest nights. He had found which shops put out food at what time. He had found 2 other rough sleepers in his area, a man named Pete and a younger woman named Dee, who watched out for each other in the particular quiet way of people who understand that looking out for each other costs nothing and can mean everything. He had kept his dignity. That was the part nobody saw. How hard people work to keep their dignity when everything else is gone. He kept himself as clean as he could. He spoke to people directly. He did not perform misery for sympathy. He simply was who he was. In circumstances he had not chosen and was working to change. And he had not given up. That was the other part. He had not stopped believing that one day the circumstances would shift. He did not know how. He did not know when. But he had decided somewhere in the first terrible month that bitterness was a luxury he could not afford. And he had held on to that decision every day since. The 3 days before the wallet were the hardest he had faced in months. The shelter had been full, 2 nights running. A cold snap had driven everyone inside, and the places simply did not have enough beds. He had slept in a doorway with a sleeping bag that was no longer fully waterproof. The first night had been uncomfortable. The second had been genuinely dangerous. He had stayed moving. That was the survival strategy for cold nights without shelter. Keep moving. Don't let the cold settle. Walk until somewhere opens. He had walked 6 miles the second night, back and forth across the same stretch of the city, keeping himself warm through movement when everything else had failed, and he had not eaten. The food bank he relied on had been closed for a deep clean. The restaurant on Clement Street had changed its schedule. The scraps that had previously appeared at 6 in the morning were now cleared before he arrived. He had tried 3 other locations. Wrong times, wrong days, wrong luck. By the 3rd morning, his body had moved past the loud stage of hunger, past the stomach cramps and the irritability, into the quiet stage. The stage that is in some ways more frightening, where the body becomes very calm and very efficient about how it uses what it has left. He knew that stage. He had been there before. He knew it meant he needed to find food soon. Not eventually. Soon. He had been walking toward the church on Morrison Street. They ran a breakfast service on Tuesdays. He'd been there before. Good people. No questions. Hot food. It was 7:45 in the morning. The breakfast service opened at 8. He was 15 minutes away, walking slowly, his body conserving. That was when he saw it. It was on the corner of Aldgate Street and Pemberton Road. A black leather wallet, lying face down on the pavement near the gutter. Not hidden, not tucked away. Just there, where it had clearly fallen from someone's pocket. Marcus stopped. He looked around. The street was not empty, but it was early morning sparse. A few people walking fast with their heads down. A delivery driver unloading across the road. Nobody paying attention to the pavement. Nobody who had seen it fall. He picked it up. He held it for a moment without opening it. Just the weight of it in his hand. It was heavy in the way that wallets are heavy when they contain things. Cards, cash, the accumulated material of a person's daily life. He opened it. The cash compartment held more money than Marcus had seen in one place since before his mother's illness. He didn't count it on the street. He looked at it long enough to understand that it was significant. Several notes, large denominations, Hundreds, certainly. Possibly more. There were cards, a driving license, a gym membership, 2 bank cards, a small photograph tucked behind a clear window, a family photograph, a man, a woman, 2 children, smiling, and a business card, embossed, heavy stock. The name, Robert Calloway. The title, founder and CEO, Calloway Group. A phone number. Marcus stood on the corner of Aldgate Street and held the wallet. He was hungry. Genuinely, physically, dangerously hungry. The food in the wallet, because that was what the cash represented, food and warmth, and the immediate relief of his most pressing crisis, was right there, in his hands. Nobody had seen him pick it up. The owner was gone. The street was moving around him indifferently. He thought about the photograph, the 2 children, the family. He thought about what it would mean to that family to lose not just the cash, but the cards, the driving license, the disruption of it, the time and the stress, and the small but real chaos of having to replace everything. He thought about something his father had said to him once. He had been about 11 years old. He had found a £5 note on the street and brought it home. His father had looked at it. "Did you see who dropped it?" he had said. Marcus had said no. His father had said, "Then that's someone's £5 that they're missing right now. You can keep it. But think about that first." He had thought about it then. He thought about it now. He looked at the business card again. He looked at the phone number. He closed the wallet. And he called. It rang 4 times. He almost hung up. Not from doubt. From the specific anxiety of a person who has spent 14 months being invisible to most of the world, suddenly making himself visible to a stranger. Then someone answered. Robert Calloway. The voice was brisk. The voice of someone in the middle of a morning that had already been full before it started. "My name is Marcus Webb," Marcus said. "I think I've found your wallet." A pause. "My wallet?" Robert Calloway said. Not a question.
"Corner," Marcus said. "I'll wait here." "Don't move," Calloway said. "I'll send someone right now." 20 minutes. Marcus said he would wait. He sat down on the low wall beside the pavement. He was still hungry. The church breakfast service had opened. He was now going to miss it. He noted that without regret. He would find something later. He waited. It was not someone who came. It was Robert Calloway himself. A black car pulled up to the corner 22 minutes after the phone call. Marcus watched it arrive. He had not been certain what to expect. A driver maybe. An assistant. Someone sent to collect the wallet and hand over a polite thank you. The man who got out of the car was in his early 50s. Well-dressed. Not ostentatiously. The suit of someone who buys quality once and wears it for years rather than the suit of someone performing wealth. He was stocky and had the look of a man who had worked physically at some point in his past and still carried it in his build. He looked around, spotted Marcus on the wall, and walked directly toward him. Marcus stood. Calloway looked at him. Not with the quick assessing glance that people sometimes gave Marcus when they registered his circumstances. Not with the careful neutrality of someone trying not to show a reaction. He just looked, directly. The way his voice had sounded on the phone. "Marcus Webb," he said. "Robert Calloway," Marcus said. They shook hands. It was a firm handshake. On both sides. Marcus had not lost that. Marcus handed him the wallet. Calloway took it. He opened it. He looked inside. Everything present. Every card. Every note. The photograph. He looked up at Marcus. "Everything is here," he said. "Yes," Marcus said. "The cash as well," Calloway said. Not an accusation. A statement. Acknowledging what he was acknowledging. "Yes," Marcus said again. Calloway was quiet for a moment. He looked at the wallet in his hand. Then at Marcus. Then back at the wallet. "When did you find it?" he said. "About half an hour ago," Marcus said. "I called as soon as I found the business card." "Were you here long before I arrived?" Calloway said. "22 minutes," Marcus said. Calloway looked at him. "You counted," he said. "I was waiting," Marcus said simply. Another silence. The morning traffic moving around them. The city indifferent and busy. "Can I ask you something?" Calloway said. "Yes," Marcus said. "How long have you been sleeping rough?" Marcus looked at him. Not defensively. He had been asked this before. Usually with a different quality. The quality of someone categorizing him. Calloway's tone was different. It was the tone of someone who actually wanted to know. 14 months, Marcus said. Calloway nodded. Slowly. Like someone receiving information they are placing carefully. "Come and have breakfast with me," he said. "Please." They went to a cafe 2 streets away. Not a grand one. The kind with laminated menus and tea that came in a pot and the smell of bacon from the moment you opened the door. Calloway had chosen it without hesitation. The kind of man, Marcus noted, who knew where the real food was. They sat opposite each other. Calloway ordered without looking at the menu. Full breakfast. Toast. Pot of tea. He looked at Marcus. "Get whatever you want," he said. "I mean that." Marcus ordered. He ordered enough. Not performatively. He was hungry and he ordered food and he did not perform either appetite or restraint. He had his dignity. Dignity did not require pretending he wasn't hungry. While they waited, Calloway talked. He did not ask Marcus to explain himself. He did not probe. He talked first. About himself. He had grown up in Manchester. His father had been a plumber. Marcus looked up at that. "So was mine," he said. "Well, I was." Calloway smiled. "My father built the business from nothing," he said. 2 vans and a phone. 15 years later it was a regional company. He sold it when I was 23 and used the money to send me and my brother to university. He looked at his tea. "I never forgot that. Where it came from. The work." The food arrived. Marcus ate. Marcus ate. He ate steadily and without rushing. 3 days of hunger requiring food, not speed. Calloway ate too. They talked between bites. Calloway asked about the plumbing. Marcus told him. The apprenticeship. The 15 years. The clients. His mother. The illness. The cost. The eviction. The shrinking options. The street. He told it plainly. Without drama. The way a person tells a story they have lived rather than one they are performing. Calloway listened the whole way through. He did not interrupt. He did not offer the small consoling sounds that people sometimes make to signal that they are listening when they are actually waiting for a pause. He listened the way Marcus imagined a man listened when he was actually going to do something with what he heard. When Marcus finished, Calloway was quiet for a moment. "You have a trade," he said. "I have a trade," Marcus said. "And you're good at it," Calloway said. Not a question. "I was good at it," Marcus said. "There's no past tense for a skill," Calloway said. "You either have it or you don't." Marcus looked at him. "What is it you're thinking?" Marcus said. Calloway put down his fork. He looked at Marcus directly. The same look he had used on the corner. The look of a man who had made decisions all his professional life and knew when he was standing at one. "I'm thinking about the wallet," he said. Calloway leaned forward slightly. Both forearms on the table. The posture of someone who was about to say something directly. "That wallet had 1,400 pounds in it," he said. "Gosh, I was carrying it for a reason I won't go into. 1,400. And you were hungry. And alone. And nobody was watching." He paused. "I've spent 25 years in business," he said. "I've hired hundreds of people. I've had employees steal from me and employees save me and employees who worked for me for 20 years without a single problem. And in all that time the thing I've found hardest to reliably identify in a person is integrity." "Hardest to identify," he said. "Because most people perform integrity when they think they're being watched. The real thing only shows up when nobody is looking." He looked at Marcus. "You thought nobody was looking," he said. "You were hungry. You had every reason that a rational person could construct to take that money. And you called me." Marcus said nothing. He waited. "I want to offer you something," Calloway said. "Not as charity. I want to be very clear about that from the start. Not as charity and not as a reward in the sense of, here's 50 pounds and thank you. What I want to offer you is more substantial. But I need you to hear all of it before you decide." "I'm listening," Marcus said. Calloway had started 3 businesses. The first had failed. The second had survived. The third, the Calloway Group, was a property maintenance and facilities management company employing 400 people across 6 cities. "My father was a plumber," he said. "My company was built on trade skills. People who know how things work and how to fix them when they don't. That's the foundation. We have a skills program, he continued. We run it for people who have trade experience and have fallen out of the workforce for whatever reason. We retrain, recertify, get people back up to current standards and place them. Usually within 3 months of starting the program. He looked at Marcus. You would qualify. More than qualify. 15 years of plumbing experience, that's not a gap to fill, that's an asset to update. Marcus listened. In addition to the program, we have a partnership with a housing association. People on the program who don't have stable accommodation get priority access to transitional housing while they're retraining. A room. Not a bedsit. A proper room with a kitchen and a bathroom for the duration of the program. Marcus sat very still. At the end of the program, Calloway said, if the assessment goes well, and I would bet on it going well, there is a guaranteed placement offer. One of our regional teams. Full contract. Full benefits. Starting salary that reflects your experience level. He stopped. He looked at Marcus. I want to be clear, he said. This is not pity. This is not charity. This is me recognizing that I have a business need for skilled people with integrity, and you have skills and integrity, and you are currently in circumstances that have nothing to do with your character or your ability. The only thing preventing the obvious solution is logistics. And I can fix logistics. Marcus sat across the breakfast table from this man he had met 40 minutes ago. He thought about 14 months. The doorways. The cold. The walking 6 miles through a freezing night. The food bank. The church on Morrison Street. Pete and Dee and the specific fragile community of people holding each other up at the bottom. He thought about his mother. About his father saying think about that first. About 15 years of good work before the circumstances narrowed. About the moment he had picked up the wallet and made a decision that had nothing to do with reward. That had simply been about who he was. Why me? Marcus said. You have a program. There are people in that program right now who needed someone to believe in them. Why specifically me? Calloway looked at him. Because you called me, he said. You didn't have to. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know what I might do. You called because it was the right thing and for no other reason. That one. That person's integrity is not circumstantial. It's structural. It's who they are. He put out his hand. Are you interested? He said. Marcus looked at the hand. At the man offering it. At the morning that had started with 3 days of hunger and a wallet on the pavement. He took the hand. He shook it. Yes, he said. The process was not magic. Marcus would be the first to say that. If you asked him afterward how it happened, he would not describe a fairy tale. He would describe work. Hard, consistent, purposeful work. The housing came first. A room in a shared transitional house in East London. Clean. Heated. With a kitchen and a bathroom and a door that locked from the inside. The first night he slept in a bed. A proper bed, not a shelter cot. He did not sleep for a long time. Not from anxiety. From the strange, overwhelming quality of safety. The body not needing to be alert. Not needing to monitor the surrounding sounds. Just allowed to rest. He had forgotten what that felt like. He lay there for a long time simply feeling it. The recertification program started 2 weeks after the breakfast. He had expected to feel behind. He had been out of formal work for 14 months. Some of the equipment had changed. Some of the certification requirements had updated. What he found instead was that the 15 years lived in his hands. The knowledge was there. Dormant but intact. Like a skill that had waited. The trainer said after the first week, "You're not retraining. You're refreshing. There's a difference." Marcus took notes anyway. He was thorough. He had always been thorough. That hadn't changed either. He called Pete 2 weeks in. He and Pete had kept in occasional contact. He told Pete where he was. What had happened. Pete was quiet for a long time after Marcus finished. "You called the man," Pete said. "After 3 days." "Yes," Marcus said. "I'd have kept the money," Pete said. "Not with shame. Just honestly." "You wouldn't have," Marcus said. "You just think you would have." Pete laughed. It was a good laugh. The laugh of someone who needed to hear that. Marcus said, "When I'm settled, when I've got the job in the place, I'm going to see what I can do. About you and Dee." Pete went quiet again. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I'm going to." The program assessment happened at the end of 10 weeks. Not 3 months. The trainer had pushed for early assessment. "There's nothing left to assess in terms of readiness," she had said in her report. "The candidate is ready." Marcus passed with the highest score the program had recorded. He did not perform surprise when he was told. He had done the work. He knew what the work had produced. He simply said thank you and meant it. The placement offer came the following week. Regional team lead. Not a junior position. Not an entry-level placement. A team lead role. Managing 3 other tradespeople. Based in the city. He read the contract carefully. All of it. Every clause. He had learned to read things carefully. 14 months had taught him that the details mattered. He signed it. Calloway called him on the day the contract was signed. Congratulations, he said. Thank you, Marcus said. For all of it. You did the work, Calloway said. You gave me the ground to do it on, Marcus said. Pause. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Yes, Calloway said. That morning. On the corner. When you came yourself instead of sending someone, why? Calloway was quiet for a moment. Because someone who returns a wallet with £1,400 in it after 3 days without food deserves to be looked in the eye by the person whose wallet it was, he said. Not to be sent an assistant. Marcus held that for a moment. Your father would have done the same, Marcus said. I think. Yes, Calloway said. He would have. The first day on the job Marcus arrived 15 minutes early. Not to impress anyone. He was simply not late. He had never been late in his working life. He saw no reason to start now. He met his team. 3 people. A young woman named Priya who was 2 years into her trade. A man named Colin who was in his 40s and had been with the company for 6 years. A younger man named Jalen who was in his first year. They all knew his story. He had not told it to them. The company had not told them either officially. But companies are not sealed environments. Things move. He had decided, when he understood that they knew, that he would not address it unless they asked. And he would not be embarrassed by it if they did. Colin asked on the second day. Directly and without unkindness. Is it true you were sleeping rough when you found Calloway's wallet? Yes, Marcus said. And you called him? Colin said. Yes, Marcus said. Colin looked at him for a moment. Good, he said. And went back to work. 3 months after the first day Marcus had a flat. His own. A 1-bedroom. Not large. Not grand. A deposit he had saved from the first 3 months of salary. A rent that was manageable. A door that locked from the inside. His own door. He stood in the empty flat the first evening. Before the furniture arrived. Just the space. The bare floor and the walls and the windows looking out at the street. He thought about the doorway on Whitfield Street where he had spent the second cold night. About walking 6 miles to stay warm. About the wallet on the pavement. About the corner of Aldgate and Pemberton where everything had shifted. He did not cry. He was not a man who cried easily. But he stood in the empty flat for a long time. Just standing. In a space that was his. Breathing. It had been one decision. Standing on a corner. Hungry. Nobody watching. A wallet full of money in his hand. One decision. That had required nothing extraordinary. No heroism. No sacrifice. Just being who he was. In a moment when being who he was cost him something he could not afford. And had given back more than he could have calculated. Pete got into the program 8 months after Marcus started. Marcus had spoken to the program coordinator. He had described Pete with the same directness Pete used about everything. Reliable. Practical. Has been through things. Will not fold. The coordinator had met Pete. Pete had started the following month. Dee took longer. She had things to work through first. Things that had nothing to do with skills or work and everything to do with what the streets do to a person over time. Marcus had connected her with a support service he had found through the program network. He had checked in every 2 weeks. Not to press. Just to be there. The way Pete and Dee had been there on the street. A year and a half after the wallet, Dee started training. Calloway invited Marcus to speak at a company event 18 months after the breakfast. Not about the wallet specifically. About the program. About what it took. About what it gave back. Marcus had agreed. He had prepared carefully. He was not a natural speaker. But he was an honest one. He stood in front of 400 people and told his story. Without drama. Without performance. Just, this is what happened. This is what it was like. This is what one morning changed. Afterward a young man had come up to him. Early 20s. The look of someone carrying something heavy and doing it quietly. I'm in the program, the young man said. I start next month. Good, Marcus said. The young man stopped. Started again. I didn't think anyone would give me a chance. I thought I'd made too many mistakes. Marcus looked at him. Mistakes are not the same as character, he said. Your character is what you do when nobody's watching. The rest is just Circumstances. And circumstances change. The young man nodded. He looked like someone who had needed to hear exactly that. Marcus still walked past the corner of Aldgate and Pemberton sometimes. On his way to a job. Or on his way home. He always paused there. Not for long. Just a moment. He would stand on the pavement where the wallet had been. And think about the decision. The one that had cost him nothing except a meal he would have found anyway. And had given back everything. He thought about what his father had said. Think about that first. He had thought about it. He had thought about the family in the photograph. The 2 children. The man whose mourning would already have been difficult enough. He had thought about that first. And everything else had followed. People sometimes asked him what the lesson was. The takeaway. The thing people should understand from his story. He always gave the same answer. Not because he had rehearsed it. Because it was the truest thing he knew. The lesson isn't that honesty gets rewarded, he said. Because it doesn't always. I know that. Plenty of honest people are never found by a Robert Calloway. That's real. He would pause. The lesson is that who you are in the moment nobody is watching is who you actually are. Not the version you perform. The version that shows up when there's nothing to gain. Another pause. I was hungry. I was desperate. I had every reason to keep that money. And I still knew exactly who I was. That's the only thing I kept from those 14 months. And it turned out to be the only thing that mattered.